It's a little after 2 in the morning, about an hour's drive south of Kampala. CBN News has joined undercover detectives, armed police, and a pastor hunting for a witch doctor accused of kidnapping and killing children.
Witch doctors believe that when you kidnap a child, you get wealth, you get protection.
Pastor Peter Siwarkiyanga leads the search. He runs Champesi Child Care Ministries, a Christian effort to stamp out child sacrifice in Uganda. He describes the witch doctor's brutal ritual.
When they get a child, most times they cut the neck, they take the blood out, they cut the genitals or any body organs that the spirits want. In a sense, it involves the child dying.
A few hours in, the trail for the killer goes cold. Pastor Peter says these gruesome crimes happen almost each month.
And there are very few actually that survive. Most of them die.
I had high hopes and dreams for Clive.
Rachel Kasingu's 3-year-old son Clive disappeared June 2nd, 2015, while playing in the backyard of their home.
It was around 10 in the morning when we noticed he was nowhere to be found.
CBN News met Kasingu the day police told her what happened to her son.
I've never even heard of child sacrifice. I didn't even know what the phrase meant.
Detective Emmanuel Mafunda took us to the spot, not too far from his home, where they found Clive's remains in this pit toilet filled with human feces. Mafunda said the key suspect turned out to be Kasingu's neighbor, a wealthy businessman who allegedly hired 2 men to kidnap and mutilate Clive's body, believing the act would bring good luck to his new hotel project. Detective Mafundo said the suspect paid the equivalent of $1,400 for Clive's life.
Found it so queer how someone, because of superstition, can be able to sacrifice a 3-year-old kid.
Child sacrifice today in Uganda is such a serious and widespread problem that the government has even set up an anti-child sacrifice and human trafficking task force. Chief Investigator Moses Binoga says that in addition to decapitation, witch doctors often slice the child's tongue and mix it with herbs for special powers.
The tongue is used to silence enemies.
Mike Chibita is Uganda's top law enforcement official, the equivalent of America's Attorney General. He says superstition and the desire to get rich quick contribute to high child sacrifice rates in his country.
The connection is these witch doctors come and tell people who want to get rich that in order to get rich, you need to sacrifice human blood.
Best friends Kanani Nankunda, George Mukisa, and Alan Simbatia are fortunate to be alive, but bear the physical and emotional scars of their past. The 3 are child sacrifice survivors. A few years back, Kanani and his 7-year-old sister were attacked in the bush. He has a 10-inch scar on the back of his neck where the witch doctor tried to drain his blood.
I fainted, and when I regained consciousness, I found my sister dead with her head missing.
2 men attacked Alan Simbatia on his way home from school.
I tried to scream for my parents, but my voice was not strong enough for them to hear me.
They stabbed his neck, sliced his head with a machete, then castrated him. Alan remained in a coma for 2 months after his miraculous rescue. George Mukisa's mother found him lying in a pool of blood after a man castrated his privates with a blunt knife. Doctors had to reconstruct his genitals with skin grafted from his forearm. The boys say they encourage each other to look past their physical challenges.
God is helping us in many different ways. When we think about what happened to us, we just pray and ask God that this would never happen to anybody else.
The 3 boys are now under Pastor Peter's care. Champisi Child Care Ministries is the only organization in the country providing long-term financial and medical care for survivors of child sacrifice.
We want to see that the life of a child who has survived is supported, that they are socially able to stand and heal from the injuries, and that they can have a life after that.
Rachel Kasigo says life without Clive will never be the same. Still, she has a message for the men who brutally murdered her 3-year-old son.
Because of my faith in Jesus, I believe in second chances, and I would give it to them because there's nothing I can do to bring Clive back. My message to them is confess your sins and come to the Lord, because when you come to the Lord, He will forgive your sins.
A newly restored shrine marking one of Christianity's holiest sites reopened this morning in Jerusalem. The shrine at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre commemorates the spot where Christians believe Jesus was buried. The restoration of the 19th century shrine was overseen by Christianity's 3 main denominations. Jonathan Vigliotti in London looks at the results. Jonathan, good morning.
Good morning. Centuries of candle smoke and visiting pilgrims had left the shrine discolored, almost black. Restoring it took months of tedious and delicate work, with the religious community anxiously watching on. A pinhole of light illuminates the newly restored shrine, protecting what Christians believe to be the entrance to the cave where Jesus was buried. The refurbished holy site was reopened to the public this morning, just in time for Easter, in a small ceremony attended by religious leaders. The ornate building, called the Edicule, sits in the center of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, one of the world's oldest churches, located in Jerusalem's Old City. Millions of pilgrims visit the site each year, and all that foot traffic, along with time, took its toll, with parts coming loose and warnings that it was structurally unsound. The over $3.5 million restoration began in the fall. It was the first attempt at refurbishing the site in 2 centuries. One of the most dramatic moments came when the cave itself was revealed for the first time in 700 years. Historians found what is believed to be the bench where Jesus' body lay.
It was really important to see the bench very flat and almost complete. From the right to the left, almost for the shape that one man can stay on it.
The entrance to the bench has been resealed with marble, but a small window's been added so visitors can see a section of the cave's original wall for themselves. The World Monument Fund, a nonprofit in New York, helped raise the funds for the project. The painstaking work, though, it's not over just yet. Now, money is being raised for another round of restorations to fix modern drainage and sewage pipes built around the tube.
Israel is one of the most excavated places on the planet. Every year, around 300 digs take place and about 40,000 artifacts are recovered. A third are from the early Christian period, and they give us a glimpse of life at the time of Jesus.
This is the place where, at the end of the day, all archaeological findings in the country come to rest.
CBN News got a rare look at just a part of many artifacts, such as large water jugs, like the ones filled with water Jesus turned into wine.
We here see an assemblage related to the period of the life of Jesus. Vessels common in the houses of the Jewish society in Jerusalem, combining limestone vessels, large vessels, small vessels, different vessels, and ceramics.
Every year there are something like 30 to 40,000 new artifacts. We are conducting around 300 excavations per year.
Archaeologist Gidon Avni says those excavations over the last 20 to 30 years have greatly increased our knowledge about life during the time of Christ.
We can reconstruct today what happened to an average person during the time of Christ, from the minute of his birth till his burial.
One rare find is this stone from a synagogue at Magdala, home to Mary Magdalene, where Jesus could have preached. And there's more. Recently, archaeologists found 9 ancient copper coins where workers were widening the main road between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
These coins show one of the major aspects of Christian pilgrimage to the Holy Land, where tens of thousands of people were coming from all over the known world of this time. All of them coming to follow the footsteps of Christ, using the road system climbing to Jerusalem.
Although archaeologists hesitate to say their work proves the Bible, they maintain it provides evidence of life during biblical times.
If you're speaking about New Testament, so archaeology very much reinforces the narrative and descriptions of the Gospels, providing physical evidence.
And if you can't make the trip to Israel, Avni says you can soon go online to see these artifacts tell the story of the land of the Bible.
The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration said on Tuesday that the number of unmanned aircrafts, known as drones, in the United States will jump dramatically over the next 5 years. The increase comes after the Obama administration in 2016 implemented new rules that opened the skies to low-level small drones for education, research, and routine commercial use. The FAA said it estimates the fleet of small hobbyist drones will more than triple from an estimated 1.1 million vehicles in 2016 to more than 3.5 million by 2021. The agency also estimates the commercial drone fleet will grow from 42,000 at the end of 2016 to about 442,000 aircrafts by 2021.
Once upon a time, medieval armies laying siege to castles used catapults to hurl rocks at the walls. Now drug smugglers laying siege to America are using the ancient devices to hurl fentanyl across the Mexican border. That startling revelation by Pennsylvania Representative Tim Murphy kicked off a House Energy and Commerce Committee hearing. Lawmakers and experts zeroed in on an opioid crisis that's been ravaging the Rust Belt and has killed thousands of people nationwide. Most of the fentanyl is being smuggled from Mexico into the country through the porous border by foot, by car, and even by launching it through catapults and drones into the United States. Many of the people who died of drug overdoses in Pennsylvania didn't even realize they were ingesting the powerful painkiller, which is 50 times more potent than heroin. Asked why the fentanyl tsunami is hitting America now, Luis Milion of the DEA said it's because the drug cartels that smuggle cocaine and heroin into America have found gold in the easily manufactured painkiller.
Really expensive to work with mice or with other mammals, and so if you're a research institution, you spend a huge amount of grant income on actually carrying out the experiments in mammals. And research larvae, the larvae that we produce, are a fraction of the cost of working with mammals. Everybody who used the larvae had to actually buy them as fishing bait. So they would have to go online to fish, to tackle shops or stop off at their local pet shops and buy, tubs of grubs that they used in the lab for their research. And obviously, as a scientist, that's kind of, introducing into your research an unacceptable level of variability. We breed them from a defined genetic background. We genome sequence the breeding colony. And so we know that all the larvae come from the same genetic stock. The larvae are age defined and their weight defined. They're surface decontaminated.
The rusty-patched bumblebee has become the first officially endangered bee species in the continental U.S. This comes after objections from some business interests and a last-minute delay ordered by the Trump administration. One of many bee types that have suffered steep population declines, the rusty-patched has disappeared from about 90% of its range in the past 20 years. It previously was common across the East Coast and much of the Midwest, where it played a crucial role as a pollinator of crops and wild plants. Its listing as an endangered species means the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will devise a plan for returning the imperiled bee to a healthy and secure condition. Advocates said that they hoped the recovery plan would also help other struggling pollinators, including bees and the monarch butterfly.
It's hard out there for young African penguins looking for a bite to eat. They can't adapt quickly enough to rapid changes in climate and fishing. Juvenile African penguins travel thousands of miles along the South African and Namibian coasts. searching for breeding grounds. The birds follow signs for sardines and anchovies, their favorite cuisine. But when they arrive at what they thought would be a buffet, jellyfish and other less nutritious fish are all that's left. Low ocean temperatures and the smell of plankton used to be reliable signs of food, but climate change and overfishing have depleted fish stocks. New research has shown that this ecological trap is responsible for reducing penguin breeding numbers by 50%. That's especially bad news since African penguins have been endangered since 2010. Researchers say catch limits and other conservation efforts could help the penguins, but more research needs to be done to protect them from the forces that affect their prey.
Authorities are now investigating vandalism to a portion of a Dakota Access oil pipeline here in Iowa.
The Mahaska County Sheriff's Office says it looks like someone may have taken a blowtorch to a part of the pipeline above ground. Deputies found a burnt hole in the safety check valve. There is a fence with barbed wire surrounding the valve, but deputies say it looks like someone got past it by going under the fence. There are no suspects. Now the Sheriff's Office is working with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation and the FBI.
Whether you agree with the pipeline or not, it's still private property. You can't damage other people's private property.
There have been months of protests over the pipeline, which critics say would harm the environment. The company building the pipeline, Energy Transfer Partners, says the project remains on track to start moving oil this week.